We live in a time where it's cool to be evil. And if you are speaking the truth, then you are considered lethal. Dang. Please do not let them deceive you. The Most High is coming back soon with vengeance and wrath for the evil. I do not care if they kill me. You see, 'cause my soul is immortal. The money and gold not important. The Most High restoring the order. I pray for your sons and your daughter. For real.
Hey, what's good, family? So I've been wanting to get into this for a little bit. It's definitely been on my heart. Every time I hear someone say, the Bible is the white man's book, it makes me cringe because it's so far from the truth. And so I wanted to get back to the basics and break things down a little bit. I'm definitely going to go over quite a bit the nature of the writings, okay, like some of the traits of the writings that we see when someone writes something. It shows signatures, shows characteristics of the writer, of the author. Okay, so a writing will reveal traits about the author, and so that's what we're going to look at. And then I'll definitely bring up obvious situations in which complexion is brought up and things like that too. But that's probably it's gonna be where I start. But before that, just kind of a basic intro about the Bible itself. So the Bible's a compilation of writings, okay, and all these different authors who have their writings in the Bible, okay? And when I say the Bible, I'm really talking about what most people are familiar with, which is the Eurocentric canon, okay? There's also the Ethiopians have their own canon, and they have more books because they did not take any of their books out, which is different from the Eurocentric version. The Eurocentric Bible has 66 canonized books at this point, but if you go back, a couple hundred years, you could find a Bible that had like 80 books. Okay, so some of the books in the Eurocentric canon have been removed. That said, what you're seeing here are a bunch of the old prophets, is what they're sometimes called. All these old prophets, have their writings canonized into the Bible as we know today, okay? But I also want to show like how old, what I consider these old prophets are. So this is 0, okay? So this is 1st century AD. So then this is 5th century BC and on, right? And so you can see probably the most notable. So Daniel was living around this time. Where's Moshe? So here's Moses. I'll try to use the Hebrew names as well. So again, to accentuate these, obviously they didn't speak English. English didn't exist back then. So they spoke their own language, which was Hebrew. And that's why they were even known by their language. That's why they're called the Hebrew Israelites. Okay, Israelite represents lineage. Okay, so Israelite means they're a descendant of a man, Jacob or Yaakov. Okay, and his name was changed to Israel. Okay, in Hebrew it's Yasharel, and this nation came from him. So that's why they're called Israelites, and they're called Hebrew by their language, Hebrew Israelites. So you can see the book of Proverbs here, okay? Here's the range for Proverbs, okay? And the range for the book of Psalms, okay? So a lot of different authors were adding to these Psalms. And Psalms is really just a book of songs, okay? So I'm already dropping hints here, like the largest book that the Hebrews wrote is a book of songs, okay? That tells you something about them, a characteristic, okay? That's not a characteristic of quote unquote white people, okay? By lineage, white people are considered Gentiles, okay? They're Gentiles based off of their lineage, All right. Since this video has to do with the basics, okay, I'll use those terms interchangeably. White people, Gentiles, okay? Alright, so anyway, I want to start with Jeremiah 10. Okay, so Jeremiah 10 verse 1 says, "Hear the word which Yah speaks to you, O house of Yasharel." Okay? And by the way, Jeremiah, or Yirmiyahu, let me go back to my timeline. Let's find Jeremiah. Okay, so here's Jeremiah. Okay? He says, "Thus says Yah, do not learn the way of the Gentiles. Do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the Gentiles are dismayed at them, for the customs of the peoples are futile. For one cuts a tree from the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen, with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers, so that it will not topple. They are upright like a palm tree, and they cannot speak. They must be carried, because they cannot go by themselves. Do not be afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, nor can they do any good." Okay, so this is a warning specifically to Israelites to stay away from this custom that is associated to the Gentiles. Okay, so this custom, all right, so there's a tree, right? They cut a tree from the forest with an axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it doesn't topple. Okay, so it stays upright. All right, and in verse 5 it tells you they are upright like a palm tree. Okay, so with these signatures or identifiers, this is the custom that we would consider during Christmas. Okay, Christmas is a Gentile festival. Okay, it is not associated to the word of the Most High. It's not associated to the Bible. Okay, that's one thing. This is a Christmas tree that the Most High is speaking against. So the reason I'm bringing this up is, if white people had written this, in general, okay, white people love Christmas. I mean, that's their festival. So why would they write into these writings against the Christmas festival? And it even states, like, they specifically, it is their custom. Do not learn the way of the Gentiles. So that's just one of the huge conflicts. Also, notice that, remember we said Jeremiah lived, what was it, 7th century? Okay, 7th century BC. So how did he even know about a Christmas tree or about this custom? Okay, so just a side note, but this is why they're called prophets. All right, this is how we know that these writings can be trusted. Okay. All right, I'm going to check out Isaiah 40, and I'm going to start at verse 18. Okay, so it says, "To whom then will you liken Elohim? Or what likeness will you compare to him?" In verse 19, "The workman molds an image, the goldsmith overspreads it with gold, and the silversmith casts silver chains. Whoever is too impoverished for such a contribution chooses a tree that will not rot. He seeks for himself a skillful workman to prepare a carved image that will not totter." Okay, so that will not totter again. So we see that this tree is upright. Notice that the tree has come up again, and that will not rot. Okay, so here, and I guess I'll work backwards from verse 20. This is the fake Christmas tree. Okay, and it's even associated to who would buy it: those who have less money. Verse 19, okay, the workman molds an image, the goldsmith overspreads it with gold, and the silversmith casts silver chains. This is a Christmas ornament. Okay, and this is not Jeremiah, right? This is that was Jeremiah before Yirmiyahu. This is Isaiah. Okay, and then let's take a look at where Isaiah is. Okay, so here's where Isaiah lived, well before the Christmas tree ever came about. Okay, and don't forget that You know, we have had Bibles that are older than, Bibles in English that are older than the Christmas custom. Okay, go Google when the Christmas custom came about. I believe it was about 17th century AD. Okay, so there's Bibles that are older than that. So we know that, again, that these writings can be trusted. This is why they're called prophets. Verse 18, to whom then will you liken Elohim, or God, or what likeness will you compare to him? Okay, so we started with verse 20 with a Christmas tree, okay, a fake Christmas tree. Verse 19 was talking about Christmas ornaments. Now they're talking about to whom then will you liken Elohim. So they're saying an image is being compared to the Most High. Or what likeness will you compare to him? Well, regarding this festival, this Christmas festival, okay, the image that's compared to the Most High is Santa Claus. Okay, so again, this is a different prophet condemning this festival that's associated to the Gentiles or white people. So again, if a white person had written this, they would not write against their own custom that they love. All right. Okay, I'm going to check out Revelation 13, and I'm just going to start in verse 9 here. Okay, so this is Revelation 13, verse 9. So it says, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. Okay. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the Kodashim. Okay, the saints in Hebrew, that term is Kodashim, means set apart. But verse 10, he who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. This is not a statement that a white person would write down. Okay, this is not something that, it's not a characteristic that they would choose to put into a book or a letter, I guess, in this state, in this situation. Okay, I'm going to look at Acts 14. I'm going to start in verse 8. Okay, now Acts. Okay, if we go back to our Bible, actually Acts and Revelation. So these are two different authors, okay, but they're still of the same lineage. So they're both the person who wrote Acts and the person who wrote Revelation. They are Israelites, okay, what we would consider Jews today, okay, and they were living in 1st century AD. Okay, so let me see if I can. Oh, okay, so here's Revelation, but this guy John, or Yochanan in Hebrew, he wrote this book along with these three, and then he also wrote this gospel. So he has 5 writings of the New Covenant or the New Testament. Okay, and then here's Acts. I believe Luke wrote Acts. Okay, yeah, this guy here. So anyway, just giving an idea of how old these books are. These are the newest writings of the Bible. So the newest writings are 2,000 years old. Okay, so Acts 14, verse 8. And in Lystra a certain man without strength in his feet was sitting, a cripple from his mother's womb, who had never walked. This man heard Paul speaking. Paul, observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, stand up straight on your feet. And he leaped and walked. Now when the people saw what Paul had done, they raised their voices, saying in the Lycaonian language, the Elohim have come down to us in the likeness of men, or the gods have come down to us in the likeness of men. And Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. Then the priest of Zeus, whose temple was in front of their city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, intending to sacrifice with the multitudes. Okay, so what happened is Paul and Barnabas, okay, those are Israelites of the southern kingdom, what you would consider Jews. In Hebrew, that term is Yahudim, okay? So a Jew or a Yahudi, okay, but there's plural. Here there's 2, So these two Yahudim, all right, came and to the Gentiles to preach to them about the power of salvation through Yahusha, the one they call Jesus. Okay? And in this case, he was preaching, but then he healed a man who was crippled. Okay? And the Gentiles, okay, the white people that saw this, okay, began to celebrate them as their own gods. Okay, so this whole situation shows a serious ignorance of the Most High God of the Hebrews. Okay, why would white people write themselves into these letters as like the babies of understanding when it comes to the God of the Hebrews? Okay, if you go back through all these writings, and remember, these are the most recent writings, okay? And they're just now learning about who Yah, the God of the Hebrews, is. This is not how they would have written themselves into these writings, as the last ones to find out about the God of the Hebrews. Okay, I'm going to go to Acts 8, and I'm going to start at verse 26. Okay, so it says, "Now an angel of the Adonai spoke to Philip, saying, Arise and go toward the south along the road which goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is desert." Oh, okay, so either like a desolate place. "So he arose and went, and behold, a man of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under Candace, the queen of the Ethiopians, who had charge of all her treasury, and had come to Jerusalem to worship, was returning. And sitting in his chariot, he was reading Isaiah the prophet. Then the Ruach, or the Spirit, said to Philip, Go near and overtake this chariot." Okay, so this Israelite, okay, a Yahudi, Philip, went to this Ethiopian, and notice it says that he already had a Hebrew writing among him, which means the Ethiopians must have known about the Hebrews, about the God of the Hebrews already. Okay, but why would white people write this in that the Africans knew about this God before they did? No, that's it's just not a characteristic. If anything, it's a conflict of interest. Okay, and real quick, I'm going to go to Acts 17. Okay, so here, I'm going to start in verse 22. It says, "Then Paul stood in the midst of the Areopagus." Okay, so he stood up on a mount and said, "Men of Athens," okay, so we know he's talking to white people, right? That he's in Athens. "I perceive that in all things you are very religious." That is a characteristic of white people, or the Gentiles, okay? "For as I was passing through and considering the objects of your worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God." Okay? That means that they had an idol set up, but they didn't know anything about this God. So then they just put this inscription. "Therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you, Elohim, who made the world and everything in it, since he is Adonai of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands." Okay, so then he preaches to them and tells him this is who the Most High is. But again, this is clear evidence that they did not know the Hebrew God. Okay? This is not white people writing this. All right, I'm going to get into interaction. Okay, so we already saw some interaction with Philip going to that Ethiopian. Okay, so in ancient times, what we would consider Ethiopic people were called Cushites. Okay, so this is from one of the articles I wrote. So if you go to blacksimba.com, BLAKSIMBA.com, I have an article called Jewish Features. Okay. Yehuda, if I hope you don't get triggered by this, okay? I just named it that so that people outside of us may be interested enough to look through this article. So that's why I named it like that. But anyway, here Genesis 10 verse 6, okay? The sons of Ham became well-established Hamitic black African kingdoms. Okay, Ethiopia, which I just talked about, is Cush. Mizraim, which is the ancient name for Egypt. Put, which would be known as Libya, and Canaan, which was conquered by Yasharel. Okay, but they became well-established Hamitic kingdoms. Okay, Ham being the father of the Africans. Okay, and so here's an ancient map that I just went ahead and put the territories so that you could see them. But here's Put, which we just brought up, Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, Cush, okay, and then here's the territory of Canaan. Okay, now most people are associate Canaan to this area. They weren't supposed to be there. Eventually they came over to where they were supposed to be. Okay, but all that to say that all these are the sons of Ham, and their territories were in Africa. Okay, Cush initially had his in the southern Arabian Peninsula, and then moved or migrated into this area over here. Okay, but anyway, these are the sons of Ham. This is why Ham is known as the father of the Africans. Okay, and when I'm talking about Africans, when I'm talking about these types of things regarding the Hebrew writings, regarding the Bible, in the Bible, they don't talk about race, because race is a concept that came from the Gentiles, from white people. Okay, they talk about lineage, just like still a lot of African tribes. They understand things based off of lineage. Okay, you are what your father is, and that is exactly what it says in the Hebrew writings. So anyway, now you know that this is where these are the sons of Ham. Okay, if Ham, their father, is the father of the Africans, then we know that these are African peoples, including Mitzrayim, which clearly tells us then that Mitzrayim, or the original Egyptians, must have been dark-skinned. Okay, Cush is his brother, right? The Ethiopian is his brother. So look at where all the other brothers are. All right, so even by lineage, through scripture, through the biblical writings, is telling you that Mizraim, ancient Egypt, were dark-complexioned, woolly-haired people. That's not something that white people would have written. Okay, that's why they had to whitewash it. Okay, if they had initially written it that way, they understand that they wouldn't have had to whitewash later. The reason they specifically had to whitewash Mitzrayim, or Egypt, was because it was so much interaction between the Hebrews. Okay, remember Jacob? That's the father of the Hebrews, the father of the Israelites. Okay, there's just too much interaction with them. All right, so that's why they had to whitewash Egypt. Okay, so Egypt is literally referred to as the land of Ham. Okay, Psalm 105 verse 27. They performed his signs among them and wonders in the land of Ham. Okay, Joseph enters Egypt. Eventually he marries an Egyptian, and his sons Ephraim and Manasseh are half Egyptian through their mother. These two sons were the founders of their Hebrew Israelite tribes. Okay, so interaction by marriage. Okay, and this is this man Joseph was a son of Jacob. Okay, and by the way, I have Jacob. Okay, who is the founder, or the nation of Yasharel came from him, right? But they grew from a family into a nation in Mitzrayim, okay, in Africa. Okay, Joseph becomes Egyptian royalty. Eventually his brothers come to Egypt and are with him for days because the Hebrews are starving, They don't recognize their Hebrew brother Joseph among the dark-skinned Egyptians even after being around him for days. This comes up in Genesis 42. Go ahead and take a look at it, okay? But all his brothers, eventually all of them, stand before him, and they did not recognize him. And at one point, I mean, they were talking and arguing amongst themselves about why they were being cursed, and they were close enough in which Joseph could hear and understand them. Okay, that means that they must have been standing pretty close to him. Now, they didn't know that he could understand because he had an interpreter with him. Okay, but he still remembered Hebrew. Okay, so Jacob passes away. The Hebrews take his body back to Canaan and bury him. The Canaanites thought the entire Hebrew family were Egyptians. Okay, they even called the place they buried Jacob the Morning of Egypt. This is recorded in Genesis 50, 7 through 11. Okay, Moses flees Egypt into Midian after becoming a cop killer. Okay, he slayed an Egyptian officer. 7 Midianite daughters all mistaken Moses for an Egyptian. Okay, so not only are they interacting and living among the Egyptians, but they clearly look similar to them. Okay, because remember, okay, so here, where they took their father back to Canaan and buried him. Okay, the Canaanites, who are also dark complexioned, woolly haired peoples. Okay, so they're used to seeing black people, what we would consider black people today, and they were getting them mixed up with the Egyptians. His own brothers, they all thought he was Egyptian. Okay. All right. After conquering Canaan, Yasharel takes the land, but also mixes with some of the Canaanites left there by taking their daughters for wives. All the tribes of which they mixed with were Hamitic. That means that they were Africans. This is recorded in Judges 3, 1 through 5. Moses married an Egyptian woman. That comes up in Numbers 12. Uriah, Bathsheba's husband before David had him killed, was a Hittite of the Canaanites, Africans. Okay. Clearly, there were Africans in the Israelite army. All right. This is brought up in 2 Samuel 11:3, 2 Samuel 23 verse 34. Okay. Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter, as well as Hittite and Sidonian women, and women of Semitic nations too. Okay. Hittites and Sidonians were Hamitic black African. Okay. Now the Semitic nations were not what we would consider African, but they were dark complexion, and they were not Gentiles. Okay, Gentile is the lineage. Remember, is a lineage that represents what we would consider the race of white people. Okay, so we know as much as Solomon was, he had a lot of shenanigans going on with all these women. And yet, even among all those women, it was like 1,000 women, different women between those he married and the concubines. He did not go out and marry Gentiles. So we still have not seen positive Gentile interaction with Israelites. Okay, just looking through these scriptures. Okay, Jeroboam flees to Egypt. Okay, again, a dark-skinned nation, to escape Solomon's fury and hide there. Now, I'm just going to go back to the Bible timeline so I can show you where Solomon, okay, in Hebrew his name is Shalamah. His dad was around here. There's Dawid. So then Shalamah it's got to be around this time period. They should have him in here. Oh, they've got one of his books. And notice it's called the Song of Songs, okay? Characteristics. Okay. An angel appeared to Joseph. In Hebrew, Joseph is Yosef. Yeshua, or Yahusha's father, not by blood, telling him to take his family into Egypt, a dark-skinned nation, to hide from the Edomite king Herod. Okay? So he was told by a celestial being, okay, to hide in a dark-skinned nation. Okay, so again, and here, this is in Matthew, okay? So now we're all the way up to 1st century, all right? So let's see, we looked at Moshe, okay, or Moses, and he had married an Egyptian. Also, he was accidentally thought to be an Egyptian, okay? Now, that was, what's that, 1500? Okay, so 1500 years later, people are, the Israelites are still running into Egypt to hide, okay? Here, the Apostle Paul's mistaken for an Egyptian. Ancient Egypt was also known as Kemet, okay, land of the blacks, by a Roman commander. Okay, so a Roman commander by sight. Okay, I'll look at this one so you know that. But basically, once Paul started speaking and he knew Greek, that's how the Roman commander understood that he wasn't an Egyptian. Okay, so this is Acts 21, verse 37 through 38. It says, "Then as Paul was about to be led into the barracks, he said to the commander, 'May I speak to you?' He replied, 'Can you speak Greek? Are you not the Egyptian who some time ago stirred up a rebellion and led the 4,000 assassins out into the wilderness?'" Okay, so as soon as he spoke, he revealed that he is Yahudi, or he at least revealed that he wasn't Egyptian. Okay, so apparently at this time, in that area, many Egyptians probably did not know Greek at that point, which also says a lot, but that's a side note. Okay, and then if we go back to Hosea, it was prophesied that Mashiach would be called out of Egypt, out of black Africa. So again, I'm just going over some interaction, okay? If white people wrote this, they wrote in a whole lot of interaction with black people. Okay, I'm going to look at Ezekiel 8. Okay, this is Ezekiel 8 verse 1. Okay, "And it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month, as I sat in my house with the elders of Yehuda sitting before me, that the hand of the Most High Yah fell upon me there. Then I looked, and there was a likeness like the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his waist and downward, fire, and from his waist and upward, like the appearance of brightness, like the color of amber. He stretched out the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my hair. And the Ruach lifted me up between earth and heaven, and brought me in visions of Elohim to Jerusalem." Okay, so anyway, but he took him by a lock of his hair. So this is Ezekiel. Ezekiel had locks. Let's see, go back to the Bible timeline. Let's see when he was around. So Ezekiel lived, he lived near where Daniel lived. Okay. In Hebrew, Ezekiel's Kezekiel. So then I'm going to see what comes up, just doing a search for locks throughout Scripture. So this is Numbers 6. "All the days of the vow of his separation, no razor shall come upon his head until the days are fulfilled, for which he separated himself to Yah. He shall be holy. Then he shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow." This is going over the old law. Okay, so the law of Moshe that Moshe had gotten from the Most High, it states that by law, a Nazirite, okay, who was uniquely dedicated to the Most High, would not cut his hair. Okay, so Samson, okay, being under that Nazirite law, was not supposed to cut his hair. So this is about him in Judges 16 here. "Delilah said to Samson, 'Until you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with.' And he said to her, 'If you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom.'" Okay, so at this point he was still messing around with her. But notice that Samson clearly had locks, right? Okay, so here is the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Shalimah. It says, "I sleep, but my heart is awake. It is the voice of my beloved. He knocks, saying, 'Open for me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one, for my head is covered with dew. my locks with the drop of the night. Okay, so Shalimah had locks. All right. And again, he brings it up. His head is like the finest gold. His locks are wavy and black as a raven. For those that don't know, this is, it says Song of Shalimah. So there is a lot of poetry in these words. Okay. All right, I'm going to check out 2 Samuel, all right, 14, verse 25. So here, okay, so this is a son of Dawid. Okay, now in all Yasharel there was no one who was praised as much as Absalom for his good looks. From the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish in him. And when he cut the hair of his head, at the end of every year he cut it because it was heavy on him. When he cut it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels according to the king's standard. Okay, so he would cut his hair once a year because it was too heavy. All right. So it's already kind of looking like, well, what kind of texture must his hair have been? So what is this? Chapter 14. So I'm going to go to chapter 18. And unfortunately, Absalom had some shenanigans going on too. So he ended up, it didn't end well, but I'm going to start in verse 9. Then Absalom met the servants of Dawid. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth. So he was left hanging between heaven and earth. And the mule which was under him went on. Okay, now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree. Okay, so this man, he got his head stuck in a tree. And he was hanging there, okay? This is not something that would normally happen, or, someone with straight hair would have to even worry about. All right? So clearly he had kinky hair, okay? Again, this is not something that the Gentiles, that white people, would have written into this. Okay, so I'm going to look at some descriptions of Yahusha, okay, or Jesus, okay. So let's see. I'm going to start in verse 4 here. Okay, this is Daniel. All right, so we go back to our timeline. This is 5th century. All right, BC. So now on the 24th day of the first month, as I was by the side of the great river, that is the Tigris, I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with the gold of Uphaz. His body was like beryl, his face like the appearance of lightning, his eyes like torches of fire, his arms and feet like burnished bronze in color, and the sound of his words like the voice of a multitude. Hallelujah. Okay, so his arms and feet like burnished bronze. Okay, that means not just regular bronze, but bronze that had been left in the fire and then it burned so that it was even darker. All right, it even says in color. So his arms and his feet were dark in color. All right. Okay, so also remember that he was clothed in linen, whose waist was girded with the gold of Uphaz. All right. So we're gonna remember this, and there's a precept to this. If we go to Revelation. Okay, so Revelation was written by Yochanan. Okay, in 1st century. So about this period here is when Yahusha died. Okay, he manifested into this world as a human, okay, and he died and was resurrected. And then this is his disciples, his Talmudim, ended up telling his story, okay, and recording everything that happened in the Gospels and in what we consider the New Testament or the New Covenant, okay. But this is going to be from Revelation 1, okay, verse 12. Then I turned to see the voice that spoke with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands, and in the midst of the 7 lampstands, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the feet, and girded about the chest with a golden band. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. Okay? This is the same man. So, Daniel saw Yahusha before he manifested on earth, and Yochanan is seeing him in heaven in his natural state as he is exalted in his glory. Okay? But regardless, this is not the description that the Gentiles, that white people would have written themselves. Okay? He would have been the whitest of white. Alright? Okay, I'm going to look at just a few more here. So I'm going to go back to Daniel 7 and verse 9. Okay, so now we're going to get a description of the Most High. Okay, so this is Daniel 7 verse 9. It says, I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. Okay? His head was like pure wool. Okay? The Ancient of Days. So, we know that the God of the Hebrews has woolly hair. And apparently he takes very, very good care of it. This is not something, again, I feel like I've said that like a lot through this video, but I just really want to reiterate this. These are not writings that white people would write. Okay? White people don't have black gods. Okay? Alright, so we're going to look at Revelation 4. So I'm going to start in verse 1. Okay? After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, Come up here, and I will show you things which must take place after this. Immediately I was in the Ruach, I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. And he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. Okay, and there was a rainbow around the throne in appearance like an emerald. Okay, so let's take a look at a jasper. Okay, so jasper is like a ruddy type of look. Okay, very earthy, but basically reddish brown. Okay. Alright, let's take a look at a sardius. Okay, similar, right? Reddish brown. So if we go back to it, and he said, he who sat there was like a jasper and a sardius stone in appearance. Okay? So, in appearance, the Most High must have had a similar tone like this. Yeah, reddish brown. Also, that would make sense of the first man he made to call him Adam. Okay, Adam was made in the image of the Most High. Okay, Adam in Hebrew means like ruddy. Okay, which, Adam, he was taken from the earth, right? So all this is adding up, like. So anyway, I hope that that makes sense. I hope that clears some things up about the writings of the Hebrews. Okay. One more thing I wanted to just take a look at. So here's Eurocentric Christianity. Okay, I just wrote this out so that it would be easier to understand. So Eurocentric Christianity is not equal to the Bible. Okay. Eurocentric Christianity is white supremacy disguised as religion. Okay? Now I understand that they have told you that this Eurocentric Christianity represents the God of the Hebrews. That was a lie. Okay? That's why they don't teach you that that what we would consider Negroes today are the true Jews. Are they ever going to tell you that? No. They're not going to tell you about the northern tribes. They're probably not sure who they are, but those are the indigenous Americans. So the Eurocentric Christianity is not pointing to the God of the Hebrews, okay? The Hebrew writings themselves is the word of the Most High, okay? So the Hebrew writings, if you read these on your own, you will understand the Most High Yah, creator of heaven and earth, okay? So the Hebrew writings can be trusted, but the Eurocentric Christianity cannot be trusted because it's just white supremacy. All right? So I hope that makes sense. I'm sure that somebody will see this or hear this rather, and if this completely triggered you, most likely you're a Christian and Gentile, and that's fine. I would recommend just go back and watch my video on the Gentile tribulation, and I think this will make more sense, okay? I'm not saying that everybody associated to Christianity or all Christians cannot serve the Most High, but I'm just saying that religions in general, okay, the concept of religion is a deception, okay? And I went over that in one of my other videos. Let me see. Okay, so this video, Deception of Religion, will explain my statement here, okay? So anyway, there are Christians that can that do believe in the Most High, okay? But there are people that do not consider themselves Christians that also believe in the God of the Hebrews. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with this term, all right? And that's another concept that's associated with Eurocentric Christianity, okay? Thinking that this term essentially means salvation, okay? That's another lie. Anyway, like I said, if you have problems with, or if you want to understand what I'm saying here more regarding the religions themselves, check out the Deception of Religion. But in regards to the Gentiles and Christians themselves, you need to probably take a look at this Great Tribulation Gentiles video, okay? All praises to the Most High Yah and to the Lion of Yahudah. Peace, family.